Today, we're making good argumentation. No, not lazy assertions, not useless insertions. Good argumentation. To start, arguments are usually done with the Leary method, which stands for label, importance, reasons, impacts. Labels set the direction of an argument and ties the adjudicator into listening to the argument while being grounded and useful to the debate. They are usually tied around an impact as well. We will be using the sample motion this house would legalize drugs in this tutorial. Now we have three possible labels for an opposition argument. The first label is too unimportant. Drugs are bad for people, and within the debate, this piece of information won't win you anything on its own. The label isn't also particularly tied to what would happen when drugs are legalized. The other label that we have here is too fantastical and is better positioned at the bottom of your trash can. Now this label is good since it's easy to understand, a touch enticing, and potentially debate winning if explained properly. Now on to importance. Importance can be found by meditation, on the internet, or just by looking at what you want your argument to do in the round. Does it improve your positive case? Does it harm your opponent's case? Or does it provide a comparative in the debate? Just a few lines on what it does on its own and in relation to other arguments can do wonders for clarity. Importance also helps the adjudicator fit your argument into the round and not forget the argument as time passes. With this argument, we can make a dent on our opponent's case, and we can illustrate a comparative if we want to. Next, we'll work on the reasons of an argument, the real meat of good argumentation. You can find reasons in their natural habitats, from common sense, online, or you can make new ones. Good reasons are detailed and illustrative. They should be clear and fill the whole gap between a change due to the motion to the benefit. It also helps to add illustrations or examples to be more clear. In our example, for each reason, there's a label and an illustration. The number of reasons an argument needs to have varies, but at the baseline, you need to keep building until the argument is believable. Additional reasons outside of that just add more depth and believability to the argument. Don't forget, quality over quantity. Lastly, good impacts complete the argument. Impacts are simple illustrations of the real-world effect of the motion. This is basically the physics of the motion. Good impacts ground your arguments in reality and allow them to be relatable and understandable. They are also better if they allow your argument to compare itself to other arguments within the debate. In our example, we can talk about people spending too much on these drugs or it disrupting people's everyday lives. But if you want to improve these impacts, you can better illustrate them and you can add even more impacts to the argument. Putting it together, we now have an argument. Congratulations. You can now try to win the debate, I guess. Okay, hello guys. Welcome to the bonus content of this lecture where we'll be diving into the argument a little more clear. Okay, so the motion that we chose for the sample would be this house would legalize drugs. It's the same one used in the lecture. But anyway, the argument that we chose was you open much more people to drug addiction. This was selected because number one, it gives your case an easy direction to work into, right? Like you can focus more on its effects onto people. You can focus more on how drug addiction affects people, all those things. But secondly, like it can also probably win the debate if it was proven on its own, and that means that that's probably a good argument label to have. Okay, on to the importance. The importance as we discussed in the lecture weren't really that in depth, but usually this just like demonstrate what your argument needs to be doing. But first of all, this argument should be able to illustrate the negative of the government side, where you show that, oh, by legalizing it, you're opening more people to drug addiction. Drug addiction is bad. That's a negative. And it can also illustrate the comparative by building the world of the other side. And you can also build your world on, like in comparison, you can say that, oh, on our world, people won't be as addicted because they won't be taking drugs due to fear of being caught. And on their world, more people will be willing to try drugs, and more people will be likely addicted to these drugs, which could probably be bad. So overall, and yeah, it either builds a positive, it builds a negative, or it builds a comparative. This argument is focused more on the negative and the comparative. And yeah, okay. The reasons that we selected then for this argument are three reasons. The first reason is a very logical one because, like, if you think about drugs, they're often like very addictive on their own, regardless of like any context. You could just say this and then notice again that all of these reasons have a label and they have an illustration. So what I did here is I stated the reason, then I'll illustrate what it looks like in the world right now and how it will probably look like in the world of government side. So what we said here is that it's just gonna be like other commonly accessible drugs. The second reason here is more of a research reason. I'm just gonna state this here right now that during debates you should not be looking up things online because that is a violation of the rules of the debate competition. But we're just doing this as an example. You should probably do your research beforehand, before the tourney, for the round, all those things. But yeah, there's an additional point here of how the fear of being caught deters people from doing drugs, diba? Because and overall that just helps to the fact that you're less likely to be addicted to drugs if you don't try it. And so what happens is people are scared of trying it. Yeah. And so you lessen the harm or the possibility of that happening. The last reason is more of a creative reason and it's more original. But it also serves the same purpose because this just states that like if companies are selling these drugs for profit, there's an incentive for them to make these drugs as addicting as possible. And so, like tying this into the previous reasons, that just adds another point for it to make these drugs more addictive. To further the point that you open more people to drug addiction, since these drugs will be more addictive. And yeah, okay. So yeah. So for the impacts, naman, the impacts are. I'm just gonna be like frank with you that these impacts aren't really illustrated that well. Um, but overall, you just need real possible effects on the world that that happens due to this change in the world due to the motion. And so what I chose here as the two impacts are number one, this can drain people's wallets because if they're addicted, they have to buy these drugs. And so it's a more economic thing. But aside from that, like ignoring all of the money aspects, it's also the fact that people are now addicted to drugs. And so they can't really function normally in society. They can't really like enjoy time with their family as much if they're doing drugs or working to get more drugs and all those things. And so those are real world impacts. So overall, um, I hope this bonus content gave you more insight into what the argument built was, and it gave you like a better understanding of how we built this argument here. Yeah. Thank you.